Okay, today's lesson is on finding the greatest common factor, which helps you solve quadratic equations. I don't know why there's an empty there. So let's go to our two vocabulary words. If you pause now and copy them down, and then we'll discuss them when you come back. Okay, the greatest common factor is the largest factor that two or more terms have. And that means that when you have terms, you have things inside them as you string them out into prime numbers that they have in common. So you're going to pull out your greatest factors that they have in common. That will show on this one, the polynomial finding the greatest common factor. Okay, so we have several parts, several terms in here. Our first one is 12x cubed. The second one is a positive 30x squared. And our last one is 42x. Now, in order to find the greatest common factor in each of these, we're going to factor them down to prime numbers. So if you remember, 12 is 2 times 6, and 6 is 2 times 3. And so now, if I do x times x times x, that is factored down into prime numbers. Those are all prime. Okay, 30 will factor down into 3 times 10. So I would put 3 times 2 times 5, and there's only 2 x's there. 42 will factor down into 7 times 6. And 6 is 2 times 3. So now we look and we say, what do they have in common? Which means all three terms have to share. So there's an x that they share. Now out of the numbers, they will share a 3 only. Okay, kind of curly. So their common factor, oh wait, no, there's also a 2. So you have a common factor of 2, a common factor of 3, and a common factor of x. So your greatest common factor is 6x. So what does that mean? That means that you're going to take a 6x out of each term, divide it out, and then tell me what's left in the parentheses. So if I take a 6x out of the 12x cubed, I've taken out this 2, I've taken out that 3, and I've taken out that x. What's left? 2x squared. Okay, of the 30x squared, I took out a 3, I took out a 2, and I took out an x. So there's 5x left. I took out from the 42x a 2, and a 3, and an x, and all that's left is a 7. And so I'm finished. That's what it looks like when you factor by taking out the greatest common factor. Now it also tells you to verify using the distributive property, which means you're going to check it. And I know most of you hate checking, so I'll do it for you. But what you're going to do is you're going to distribute 6x times 2x squared is 12x cubed. 6x times 5x is 30x squared. And 6x times 7 is 42x. And if you look, that's what you got way back here at the beginning, which means you did it correctly. Yay. Let's move on. Okay. I'd like you to pause now and go through and see what you can find with this one. Remember to first factor into prime numbers, and then circle the ones that are the same, and then take out the greatest common factor. When you come back, we'll do it together. Okay, so we have 35x y to the fourth. Now we have a negative 14 x to the fourth y squared z. I'm going to draw my z's with that line through because mine tend to look like 2's and then My students all have fits. X cubed, Y cubed, Z cubed. So the first thing I'm going to do is take these down into prime numbers. 35 is 7 times 5 times, and then I have 1x and 4 y's. Okay, the next one, with a negative 14, I think I'll take a negative 1 out times a 7 times a 2. And then I have 4 x's, 2 y's, and 1 z. Down at the bottom, 56 is 7 times 8, and 8 is 2 times 2 times 2. See how my 2's start to look like z's? Then I have 3 x's, 3 y's, and 3 z's. So, looks like each one of them has a 7. As far as numbers, I think that's it. And then each one of them has 1 y, or 1 x, but there doesn't seem to be any more x's that all 3 have. Let's see, 1 y, 1 y, 1 y, another y, another y, and another y. The top one doesn't have any z's, so we have no z's in common. So what do we have left? Everyone has a 7. Everyone has an x, and everyone has 2 y's. So your greatest common factor is going to be 7xy squared. So we'll take 7xy squared and divide it out. So in 35x squared, I took out the 7, I took out the x, and I took out 2 y's. So what do I have left? A 5 and a y squared. On the negative 14, I took out the 7, 1 of the x's, and 2 of the y's. So I have left a negative 1 times 2, which is negative 2, and then 3 x's. No y's are left, but I have a z. For the last one, I took out the 7x, 2 y's. I have positive 2 times 2 times 2 is 8, x squared, a y, and 3 z's. And that very complicated looking thing is your answer. Hope you got it. Okay. Now we're going to switch. It's the same type of thing, but now we're switching to more words to confuse you, of course. Represents, let's see, the polynomial 15x squared minus 3x represents the area of a rectangular plot. So there's our rectangular plot. The length is equal to the greatest common factor. Determine the expression for the length and width of the garden. So apparently this is a garden. There's your length, there's your width, because the area is length times width. And they said the length is the greatest common factor. So probably we should take this 15x squared and minus 3x and find their greatest common factor. So 15, 3 times 5 times x, and negative 3 is negative 1 times 3 times x. So you can see that they have a 3 in common, an x in common, so their greatest common factor is 3x. Okay? So the length, which is the greatest common factor, is 3x. It's supposed to be equal sign there. Okay, so if I take out the 3x, what do I have left? Well, I took out the 3 and the x, so what's left is a 5x. On the bottom, I took out the 3 and the x, I have a negative 1. So the 3x is the length, and the 5x plus 1 is the width. Minus 1, sorry. Okay. If we look at an equilateral triangle, whoa, has a perimeter, which means distance around, of, we have equilateral triangle. So equilateral means each of the sides is the same length. It has a perimeter of 15x cubed minus 33y squared. So what would the greatest common factor of this be? 3 times 5 times x times x times x. 33 is negative 1 times 3 times 11 times y. So if you look, you only have a 3 in common, so let's pull out the 3. If I take out the 3 out of the top, I have 5x cubed left. If I take the 3 out of the bottom one, I have negative 11y squared. Notice we couldn't take out any of the letters because they had none in common. And because there are 3, because it's 3 times this quantity, and it's an equilateral triangle, this is the length of each side. So each side equals 5x cubed minus 11y squared. Looks good. Now, if you're still struggling with this, you might want to start your homework and see how far you can get. There's also a YouTube video that you can go to that will explain it a little bit further.